Hello and welcome to Tetch Talk. Today we're going to be talking Grand Theft Auto, and specifically Grand Theft Auto user-generated content with FiveM role-playing, racing, and other things. I'm joined today by a good friend of mine of many years, TJ Myhill, a lawyer at Stites and Harbison. He's a lawyer who has a focus on intellectual property, business law, litigation, and gaming. He's a member of the board for the Georgia Game Developers Association, as well as a long-time practitioner in copyright law. I've done many talks, panels, and discussions with TJ in the past on copyright law. So, without further ado, welcome, TJ. I believe you have something you need to get off your chest right at the start.
Yes, indeed. Good to be here. I just want to say that while I am a lawyer and we will be talking about a lot of legal topics today, I am not providing anything that should be seen as legal advice about you or your specific facts or circumstances. If you have any questions or if you have any issues or you've gotten any letters from Rockstar or anyone else, you should consult a lawyer immediately, whether it's me or someone else.
Okay, we have to get that, legal disclaimer out of the way. So
absolutely.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We are here today to talk about CFX, FiveM, and GTA 5 and online. There's been a lot of contention and questions in the community recently about new community changes that are being put in concerning user-generated content. So I'm hoping you're going to be here to help navigate the path and help people understand a bit as to what, why, where, when, who, how, and everything else.
Absolutely. Hopefully, at least.
Okay. So I say you've been a game-related lawyer for many years now, right?
Yes.
On the board of the Georgia Game Developers Association.
So, yeah.
So if anybody's going to know the ways around things, I know you will. I know when we brought this topic up, you said this reminded me a lot of the DMCA panels we used to do together many years ago, right?
Yes, indeed. It's still kind of the same subject, but hasn't been quite as hot an issue in the last couple of years. We used to speak about that 10 years ago at DragonCon, and it was hot news because it was things that were being done. Now that's just old hat. It's what people do day in and day out. A DMCA takedown is just part of the world we live in.
What started all this off was, I'm not quite sure how familiar you are with GTA 5 at all. You're a big murder spree rampager.
I like my murder a little more up close and personal. I'm a fighting game guy, but no, I'm very familiar with GTA. I have not played 5. No, I've never been a PC gamer. I can't touch type, so everything on the keyboard is confusing to me. And unfortunately, I am too old school. I like a D-pad and a couple of buttons over here. You start getting joysticks involved, and my thumbs don't know what to do. So, yeah.
Xbox controllers work wonderfully on Windows PCs.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, it's the same basic system. So, yeah, they're just Bluetooth in. Okay, so there's a mod system called FiveM for anyone who doesn't know now, which basically duplicates a single player thing and produces its own map for multiplayer use, which people then can make modifications on. So there are some FiveM servers that create racing tracks and do pure racing servers. There are others that make a big thing is role play. I don't know if you've ever watched on YouTube any of the kind of GTA role play things that people like role play cops and robbers and stuff. There's huge amounts of videos, of people playing cops, robbers, mod them to be whole British servers and everything like that,
Yeah, he's going touch me 4-5, scramble, they can find stop.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just Grey Golf, we're northbound M62, 3 units behind, 1 advanced 2T, but if you want to take primary, I'll keep comms.
Yeah, no worries, I'll take comms. We're northbound Mike 62, it's low traffic, low pedestrians, clear visibility, road surface is dry, super boy brake, lowest pursuit. 120 in the 70. Can I get IPP authorised, please?
Yeah, Roger.
It's got to be authorised at times 20 to 16.
Yeah,
received.
deployed.
And also get
to
two-pack authorised plate. You've got two two-pack units behind.
That was done by a third-party company called CFX, who Rockstar bought out over the summer. And when Rockstar bought them out, they put in a change in the licensing agreement, which says that no user-generated content should contain any, I mean any, outside data. No real-world stuff and no stuff from other games. So that was where we're at, and that caused a lot of consternation. Because a lot of things with roleplay is they want realism. You know, right. You're a cop thing. You want, to have your Dodge Charger cop car to look like a Dodge Charger cop car with the lights and So
absolutely. If you're not, I mean, the drive for realism makes very good sense, but we're at the bleeding heart of intellectual property law, where creativity and protectivity they don't merge, they clash. The creative brand is always at odds with the desire to protect the creation, and that is, I think, a core element of what I do, is trying to protect those creatives who have created something while not stifling too much the other creativity that's out there. The goal of an intellectual property law is to encourage creativity. It's to encourage people to create things. But the way we encourage that is by allowing them to have a monopoly on it and take the benefit of their creation.
Yeah. So let's go this. I said there's two main areas with say the FiveM. I mean, there's also another one for Red Dead Redemption, which is the other big Rockstar game, which is a Wild West one they call Red M. But we'll focus on the FiveM because that's where my knowledge is, and that's where a lot of people focus on. So I say there's two basic types. There's the racing ones, and then there's the RP. So we'll start with the racing ones. One of the big things, a lot of them, is racing tracks. You want to race around, you want to recreate some famous racing tracks, Monaco or Silverstone or Mount Panorama, which is a big Australian one. What's it called? It would be Bathurst. Yes, Bathurst. So you recreate those tracks into GTA, and you get all the a proper racing thing and stuff. So under these new rules, that's not allowed because of, they claim, copyright. How does that square with you? Does that seem okay?
Well, so here's what you protect and what you don't protect. You can't protect facts. You can't protect the fact of the track. But to the extent that someone could argue that the way that track was laid out is somehow unique and creative and was developed and has copyright rights, you could maybe make an argument that the track design itself is copyrighted. I think more what you'll see is people arguing that any branding along that track or any other elements that, because how do you identify that this, I mean, some of these are a knowable layout, a knowable route, but but the majority of, I mean, how do you know this road from that road? You look at signage. You look at things that make identifying features. And some of those identifying features would certainly be things that could be protectable by copyright or in some cases trademark. The other thing is, where are you getting the track? If you create your own track from scratch and just code the layout of you know, the racetrack or the circuit or whatever, maybe you're okay. But if you go lift that code from a racing game that designed the track and you import it into your mod, then you've got a real copyright issue, because that's not copywriting the facts of the design of the track. That's copywriting somebody else's code. Or, excuse me, that's infringing someone else's code that is copyrighted and copyrightable. So there's a lot of moving parts there on how that's generated that says what you would be protecting. And there's a lot of moving parts on what you've included, because again, while the actual physical dimensions of the track may not be protected, the defining elements of the track may be.
Okay, so let's take Monaco, for instance, very, very famous Formula One course based on the street circuits of the city of Monaco, famous for its tunnel, which is how you identify. You have the Chicago, you have the casino square, turn down, and the tunnel underneath and through and stuff. It's I don't know if you watch Formula One at all. Ever?
I've seen some. I'm a drag strip guy. I like a quarter-mile straight line. Loud.
It's a very, very distinctive track. I mean, there's no other track like it. I got a friend who works at Red Bull Racing. She says, they have to put a specially designed car for it because it's such a unique track. They have to, put whole new steering racks in because there's such tight corners and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's very distinctive, unique. So the facts are, this track is how it is. So you're saying that if they took the track from, say, Forza Motorsport and put that and used the code to translate it from Forza Motorsport, the facts of the track, that would still be a copyrighted thing.
Correct, because the creation of so copyright again is a funny animal, because the facts aren't copyrighted, but the expression of the facts are. The key element here, I'm going to give it to the most basic element. This is the way we teach it in law school. Recipes and cookbooks. A recipe is literally a list of facts. Cannot protect a recipe. There is no intellectual property on cup of flour, half a cup of sugar, 2 eggs, whatever that makes, some kind of cake, I don't know. But that recipe cannot be protected. The cookbook can be. If the cookbook is more than just the list of ingredients, if it has some expression, if it has some explanation of the dish, if it has some explanation of the process, that can all be protected.
A photo of the finished dish, perhaps?
Photo of the finished dish would be protected. So if your cookbook was literally just list of ingredients, cooking time, list of ingredients, cooking time, you'd have the world's least protectable cookbook. Wouldn't be protected at all. But when you have those additional elements that go around those, that becomes a protectable work. So you can take what is an uncopyrightable list of facts and turn it into a copyrighted work. So that's the same thing with if you take the Forza track or the Need for Speed track and you import it somewhere, that code that made that track in the game is still protectable. It's still a copyrightable expression, even though what it is expressing is the fact of the Monaco track.
Okay. So if I took another track, there's a video I'm going to show right now, which shows a track from Wreckfest. It's been recreated in GTA, but it has been recreated from scratch, from memory and stuff. And they've used the internal track builder to make it. So that track would be okay then, right?
Correct. That track is
from scratch from their memory.
That track is your individual creation. It's your memory, so it's not even a fact question. It's the facts as you remember them. But even if it was 100% factually accurate, it would be fine. What could be a problem there again is if there were some elements, again, what made the track was some signage or some artwork or something that was identifiable as as an element, that would be problematic potentially still. But
Okay.
to the extent that it's just the road, you're fine.
I mean, this one would be, let's see, there's two things on. One is it's sort of shaped like a bit like a penis. It's sort of an up and down and then around like that, with a jump in the center, sort of thing. So there's Hellride and there's another one, Deathloop are the names of them. See them all. But they're recreated, but they'd be fine because they are not using somebody else's copyrighted files as a base. They are just using memory in their internal correction.
Correct. They're developing their own their own
version,
their own original content.
Okay. The issue is that CFX and Rockstar, as they say it themselves, is they don't seem to. They claim that because it is content, the idea from another game, that it would be an issue and has to be taken down.
So again, idea cannot be copyrighted.
Yeah.
Now, and again, to the extent that there's some, let me just clarify even the earlier topic. To the extent that there is some unique copyrightable element of the track design. I mean, obviously, we think about the most basic design, right? We talk about a NASCAR oval. There is nothing unique or creative about an oval. If you have more intricate designs, we have these arguments about golf courses. If you have a more intricate design, if you have a more intricate layout, if you have, some specific element of your track that makes your track particularly difficult or interesting to the viewer, then that might be something that someone could try to make a copyright claim over. But the basic track itself is probably fine. The track that's in someone else's game would have that same real world problem. The idea of the track, the basic oval, could never be copyrighted. I have the idea of a track that looks like a penis. Right? I'm going to put that in. That's in every 13-year-old boy's sketchbook somewhere. So that's not really a unique idea that people haven't also come up with on their own. But in terms of some element of that track, if you don't copy the code but you copy the track idea isn't protected. But if there's some unique physical aspect of that track, that could be a protectable element.
Then, so we move on to cars. So that common to both role play and racing ones is the idea of cars. So, for instance, I said earlier, the police Dodge Charger, the kind of ubiquitous one, or the police Crown Vic Interceptor. The standard cop car for the last 30 odd years nowadays.
I still can't pass one on the road without slowing down.
I think every department's retired. No, actually, my city still has one. They give it to the rookie as soon as he gets hired on.
Yeah, no, they're all. I think they're all in private hands now, and it's still it is just an instinctual drive. No pun intended. The same issue arises here, though, right? We have the question of importing from other games, which is, I think, how a lot of these mods get developed. Is, ooh, here's a cool car, here's a cool car, here's a cool car. I'm going to put them all together in here. Well, then we run into the same problem of I'm copying someone else's code. So Forza, for example, has licensed some of those cars, created them in its game, and now dropped them in. Not Forza, but someone else has dropped those Forza creations, Forza licensed works into their mod. So we have kind of a double layer of problem. The first problem is that you're copying code that someone else has created for someone else's game. And that is problematic in a mod. But also, we get to the fact that what you have then copied is the code for a Dodge Charger or a Ford Crown Vic. And those are real world badges, real world trademarks, real world elements that go on the car to identify what it is. Now, as I just said, you can see a Crown Vic in your sleep. You know that outline. You know what it is. It's not a it's ingrained in all our minds. So even without the Ford badging, you might know what that car is, and there might be some issue there. But most of the realism comes from having the badging, right? I mean, I want to drive the Dodge. I want to drive the Ford. I don't want to drive the Forge Crown Elizabeth. I want to drive the Ford Crown Vic. That's what I want to drive. I want it to have that, so I have that realism. That's that conflict between I want the realism and the realism either costing money in terms of licensing or costing money in terms of penalties. And so when you have a car in a racing game that has licensed the car, having that as part of your branding, right? Ford wants their race cars. Ford wants the GT in a racing game. Chevy wants a Camaro or a Corvette in a racing game. Lamborghini wants to be in a racing game. What they don't want is a car with a lot of Ford or Chevy or Lamborghini badging running down pedestrians and being involved in a shootout and all the things that maybe aren't as good a press as look how fast I went around the track. So it's a challenge for some games to get a license, even if they wanted to go that route. And of course, an individual home modder is at a completely different level. I mean, I wouldn't even know who to reach out to if I wanted to create a Dodge Challenger mod to put into my game. I'd write a letter to Dodge, Mr. Dodge, please let me. I mean, I'm a lawyer and I do this all the time. I could probably find that person, but it's not an easy process for the home individual to go through any kind of license. And then of course, how do you even license it? What's a licensing cost that you or I might pay? So the licensing question becomes much more complicated at a mod level.
Yeah. So the thing that also applies to from creating from scratch, right? If you say from memory, if you create like a Crown Vic from memory, you can see it in your sleep. So that also applies to from scratch, right?
To certain cars. So cars, again, trademarks. When we're talking about the car design or the car badging, we've moved on from the copyrighted code or the copyrighted art to branding, to trademarks. And trademarks are a little bit different. Trademarks aren't something that looks like someone else. It's something that looks like a brand identifier of someone else. Yeah. And so what with the Crown Vic, for example, we all know what that one looks like. So you might be able to say Ford could claim a trademark in the specific outlines of that car. Maybe there could be a trademark claim in specific outlines of other very unique vehicles, a Hummer, a Bentley, a Rolls-Royce. But this is a random four-door kind of bubbly sedan. Is that a Civic? Is that a Hyundai? Is that a Toyota? I don't know. That is car, and the car doesn't carry trademark rights to any one brand. So there are lots of cars that someone could create generically and could create, even to the specs of someone's specific vehicle, as long as it wasn't badged that way, as long as it didn't have the actual company or brand or trim logo on it, you might have no trademark problems at all, because even though it's clearly their complete dimensions, it's not a unique enough and definable enough look that the average consuming public would know from the pure outline what that car was.
Okay. I'm just reading here from the Community Pulse for last month. Is we removed all branded car badges from the real world car models we use in our server. Are we following the PLA restrictions on third-party IP? And they say debadging vehicles is a good first step, but that does not alone mean your server is fully compliant with the PLA. You must fully remove all real-world vehicles from your server.
Well, and again, that's the safe answer. That's the lawyer answer.
Yeah.
when I give my clients advice, I always try to tell them the legal answer, and then I try to tell them the practical answer. Right? Those are not always the same answer. Sometimes the legal answer is, I mean, we're going to be far more safe. We're going to be far more conservative in our opinion, because it's easier to say take everything out than to try to make case by case analyses. But the business decision is sometimes easier to make the case by case analyses, or to skim off the top and see what happens. Right? Debadging all the cars is an excellent first step. It may also be the last step, but again, the conservative legal answer of no, take everything out, we don't want any real world stuff in there, is to avoid the Hummer, is to avoid the Beetle, is to avoid the clearly identifiable, we know what that car is. I don't care if you call it the Tetch Mobile. It's a Beetle. We know what a Beetle looks like, right? That's the problem with saying that debadging cars solves all the problems. Trademarks can extend beyond that badge itself, but not every car is a Beetle, and most cars, once you've debadged them, are car.
And I mean, especially these days.
Exactly.
These days, a lot of cars are just so generic you can't tell anymore.
Exactly. So I think that if the modding community got rid of or changed the really, really specific cars, the majority of cars would never be a problem. It's like we have this issue in games with clothing too. Clothing comes up a lot. In fact, I know it's been an issue in this too, but clothing comes up a lot in game design. And I mean, you can make a character wear a sweater vest. This is not a definable. But if I was wearing, some Burberry plaid sweater vest, or an overcoat, you're going to get a letter. You're going to get something that demands takedown, because that's an identifiable brand. That's an identifiable work. Now, can you say you can have no real world clothing? You can copy what I'm wearing exactly. You could probably copy what you're wearing exactly. But if you copy it with a little Columbia thing up here, or a little North Face thing back here, well, then you've got a problem. And that's where the issue comes in. So can there be no real world things? That's silly. But can there be no real world things that people might claim intellectual property over? It's a harder line to draw as an attorney writing a broad sweeping terms of service agreement for everyone to agree to. The answer is no. We'll have none of that. And then when you do it in a non-problematic way, okay, we won't enforce that. That's not a problem. You're never going to get a letter, and I'm never going to have to deal with it, and so it doesn't matter. But when you do put, somebody in Burberry plaid getting into a Hummer, even if it's all debadged, I get to come and say, I'm getting angry letters and you need to take that down, because that's part of my terms of service. You can't have that. So that's what they're written for. It's written broadly so that when there is a problem, I can address the problem.
Would the same apply to liveries, such as, again, police departments, big in role play, race cars? Those are government, often the liveries of cars, the stripes, the police, the sheriff's department sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few like to role play those, like say a state highway patrol, like a California highway patrol. Want to play at Chips? They want to be Ponch and John. Right. We're showing our age here, right?
Have those Migo figures.
Yeah. So they want their cars to look like California Highway Patrol, for instance, as they go chasing down the highways.
Well, that's
those are government cars. So would they be a lot of government stuff, depending on the state? I know is public domain.
Well, and that depends on the state. So that's an interesting question, because one of the problems with using the livery of a police force is usually that if I go paint my car to look like my local police, I'm impersonating a police officer. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to go, I'm going to use that for nefarious purposes and start pulling people over and, demanding tickets or whatever. So the protection of that is usually to avoid that. Obviously, no one is concerned when I pull them over in a game that the real police are really, that's the fun of the role play, but it's not, I'm not impersonating an officer. So you are not getting the main problem with that. Now, it does depend on your jurisdiction and your local or state or federal provisions for whatever level of officer you're I want to say impersonating, but that's obviously what we're trying to. What's your role play? To the extent that your local jurisdiction has public domain, allows use of that, has no problem with you putting branding or badging up online or things like that, there may be no issues. To the extent your local jurisdiction takes some protection over that, again, just because they want to avoid the other issues, potentially there is a problem. So to some extent, the reason for not using police badging is non-existent in this type of situation, but it still depends on how that jurisdiction, how that force, the police force, federal force, whatever, does protect their badging.
So video right here with the using a British style ambulance, designed as, turn an ambulance into like the British style ambulances and the Metropolitan police cars, after stuff. So yeah, we'll come on to the last part, and and that is things like buildings, and models like that.
Buildings again, very, very tricky because there's architecture is definitively copyrightable. You can absolutely protect your architecture. However, it's kind of like a car, right? I have a big rectangular glass windowed skyscraper. What city am I in? What building is that? That is building. And so to the extent that your building is generic, you're not going to get a lot of play off of a claim that you're infringing my artwork. You use an entire cityscape. Now I can tell what buildings are which, and maybe you're going to get an issue from that architect. You use a building that is just absolutely covered in architectural detail that's defined and definable, has a really unique shape, has a 100 gargoyles off of it or something, you're going to have problems because I'm going to know what that building is. So the architecture of something, and that's why a lot of buildings now are trying to, even if they're glass rectangles 3/4 the way up, they all have some, I don't know, stupid doodad on the roof. Because
the King and Queen building, for instance.
Which one?
The Kings and Queen building here in Atlanta.
The King and Queen building, or the King and Spalding building with the claw, or the Bank of America rocket ship. All of that is so that that I'm talking about the King and Queen, or the 1180 Peachtree building, or the Bank of America building, because that's what we know, and you can define those. So 3/4 of those buildings looks like building, but that top doodad makes it so that it's more protectable and more easily to make a claim over.
In fact, yeah, and that also reminds me of another one. I think you used to have an office in it, the Envelope building as well.
We did. That's right.
It just had just a line of lights, wasn't it? It was all basically distinguished. It was just to make it look like an envelope.
That's right. It was literally the definition of a glass rectangle, but it had a lighted triangle on the top, and that's how you know what that building is. And so it's because architecture is now, I say is now like it's something new, but it's not new. It's 40 years old. Because architecture is definitively and unquestionably protectable. That's when you start getting these elements that give you that little bit of extra oomph. and of course we're talking about the outside of buildings, but obviously we mentioned earlier we're both we both been to DragonCon a number of times. The interior of a lot of the downtown Atlanta buildings is far more identifiable and interesting, frankly, than the outsides.
Especially if you're a Loki fan. Recently, you got the Marriott's has been big in Loki.
We all know where the TVA is if we've been to DragonCon. So that's the issue, right? You have that, if you have that Marriott spine in the background from the Marriott downtown, you definitely have a feature that people are going to recognize, and that's definitely something that would be protectable. You have generic hotel lobby with beige and burgundy furniture and a desk where people check you in and maybe an elevator over here. Building. No one's gonna have a letter about that, because even though that looks like every hotel, I recognize that as hotel. That reads hotel. It does so because it looks like every other hotel. I can't tell you if I'm in a Hilton or a Hampton Inn. I can't tell you if I'm in a Marriott or a Choice. That's what a hotel looks like. But if you put the spine, then you've got a different question. So
yeah, okay. And so and the same obviously goes with fast food places. You've got the kind of somewhat iconic, the old McDonald's buildings, the old Pizza Hut kind of buildings and stuff.
Pizza Hut roof,
yeah.
So. Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of thing where that's a great example too of how things like the car issue with badging or the clothes issue with badging works. The used to be a Pizza Hut sites are the best example of how you still know what something looks like and you still know what something is, and it still could have trademark protection even if it doesn't have the logo or even the colors anymore. So the idea that this defines that place is what a trademark is. And trademarks, one of the things that I think people forget or maybe don't know is that trademarks have to be protected.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of pushback on the terms of service. Why can't I who am I harming if I put, it's free advertising. Why can't I put a Ford Crown Victoria or a Dodge Charger in this game and have them chase, the criminals in a Chevy Camaro? Why can't I do that? It's free advertising. Now everyone's going to go out and want a Chevy in real life. It's not free advertising. It's a potential hardship for them to then protect their brand down the road. It's a potential creation of a generic brand. And that's what creates these demand letters. It's not that anyone really cares, right? It's not that Disney wants to send letters to preschools saying you can't paint Mickey Mouse on your wall. I mean, no one wants.
Well, we do at Disney. They do probably.
Well, some Disney attorneys do, but no one wants to bite the hand of their main customer, right? No one wants to anger the fan base, but you write the letter to the preschool because otherwise you don't get to claim it. You don't get to protect that brand. Your brand has gone generic, or the guy who is paying you $10,000 a month to paint your character on their wall is now really annoyed that they're paying you $10,000 a month and you're letting that guy do it for free, and they're demanding you go enforce the rights. So when you have trademarks or trademark licenses or copyright licenses, enforcing that intellectual property is sometimes not even a choice element. Sometimes you just have to send a letter because you have to send a letter. And that's the way you make sure that your rights exist. So it's not always we find this deeply offensive and are bothered by it. Sometimes it's just, well, crap, now we've seen this. I have to do something about it.
Although with trademarks, aren't they usually categorized as well? So if they don't have, say, Crown Vic doesn't have a trademark for as a video game category, then it would not be
except it's in cars, and so how is it in creating a video game? It is not. Could Ford Ford is not out there programming their own police game, police simulator. But the issue of using the car does create a perception of licensing, because we know that when we see things, or we assume that when we see things in a game, in a movie, in a any type of entertainment setting, that someone probably paid to be there. They want to be there. That's their that's their branding, their commercial. They're affiliated with this. They're endorsing this, and that's where the problem of course, racing versus crime spree kind of makes a bit of a difference in endorsement. I'm endorsing the fact that my car goes really fast and can handle the corners is much less problematic than I'm endorsing the fact that my car can outrun the cops. That's a different type of ad. Yeah. And so the question of sponsorship or endorsement or affiliation is what becomes an issue in these trademark issues. And I think the other thing that we're seeing here now, I've never seen the CFX terms of service that existed before. I know I've seen the new ones, but I don't know what they added or what they changed. Maybe not much, because these restrictions on third-party intellectual property or any other third-party rights of privacy, rights of publicity, you can't put LeBron James in your game either. But these exist in almost every term of service that I've ever seen, read, certainly every one I've ever written. And the reason is, again, when that letter comes, I want to be able to say, it's not me, I'm protected. And also I have the right now to take it down, to delete your content, to demand moderation of your content because it's part of my terms of service. And the higher up you go, the more people take that seriously. So I'm sure that CFX had some limitation on third-party liability.
Not really, from what I recall. They didn't have much in the way of it at all. They mainly relied on, this is the thing we were just about to pivot to, is CDA 230.
Right.
In that each server runs the FiveM software on their own server, not under the control of CFX or Rockstar or something. They're under each individual person's own control. So any demands put to Rockstar, CFX and stuff would clearly get CDA 230, because it's not them in control. It's not them doing it. It would be the individual server owners, which makes me kind of curious about the whole thing. They're claiming copyright issues when they haven't been given any copyright issues that I'm aware of. I've checked the Lumen database and elsewhere. And I've also, they wouldn't be getting it because they're not the ones running the servers. They're not the ones doing the infringement.
Right.
They're just a software provider.
So a couple of things on that. So the first thing is, again, this was the point I was about to make, though, that individual server, CFX, Rockstar. And the reason that's relevant is demand letters, takedowns are takedowns. They're easy, they're cheap, they're convenient. That's what they exist for. But actually pursuing something is not. It's not easy, cheap, or convenient. Intellectual property suits are expensive.
Oh yeah.
And going against, an individual modder on his own server, that's about as small potatoes as it gets. I mean, not to be offensive to anyone who's putting in that level of effort, but in terms of what recovery I would get, I can get an injunction. That's the core remedy for intellectual property. But you don't usually start spending infringement money and infringement litigation money unless you're expecting to get damages that justify it, or that person is causing such harm to your brand that it's worth spending $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 to stop that infringement, even if you don't get any money back. And when I say that the individual modder, the individual level is small potatoes, it's because you're not harming my brand that much. There's not that many people using your specific mod, and you're not likely to be the kind of person who can pay a 6 or 7 million, figure damages. So ultimately, how much am I willing to go after you? The individual mod, the individual, creator of a mod on an individual
Yeah.
server. How much am I willing to go after a Rockstar? Oh, a whole lot more, right? If I can pin this on them, then I have somebody who can pay my damage. And by the way, even if they don't pay my damages, even if they go bankrupt, they've got a whole lot more people potentially on that mod. They've got a whole lot more people making use of that, or at least making it out there where the public is aware of it, and I might have problems with my brand. So the higher up that ladder you go, the more likely you're going to get someone who is taking it seriously and does more than just send a nasty letter. And so when you're at the Rockstar level, you have to take it more seriously yourself, because you're going to get more of that. You're going to get more of that backlash. And if you don't do something about it, you're the one who's going to get sued. But that brings us to Section 230. So let's talk about that. Do you want to define that, or do you want me to define that?
All right, yeah, I'll define it. Sure. CDA 230 of Title 47 says, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider.
And so that's critical to the existence of the internet, right? I mean, and now this again, not the existence of the internet as we know it today, but also this came a little bit after the DMCA, which again kind of gave the same protections, but only for copyright. Did it come before?
It came before. 96.
Was it? Oh yeah, you're right. 96. Yeah. So, but these laws, the DMCA takedown, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown process for copyrights, and Section 230 for other speech, gave us the ability to allow user-generated content. Without these protections, no one in their right mind would allow anyone to comment on their page, whether it was a comment or a review, or posting content, posting an article, posting photos, because if any of those turned out to be infringing or problematic or defamatory or hate speech or privacy violating, any of these things would come back and bite me, the owner of the site, because I am contributing to that infringement. I am vicariously infringing. I am vicariously and contributorily defaming and slandering and identifying privacy, etc.
Yeah, and so, YouTube wouldn't carry things like this either, because they'd be afraid of people turning around and saying
exactly that.
Now, everyone else will just have heard a lot of beeps, but yeah.
Or at the end of the day, who knows what? Right. I mean, who knows what opinions I may bring, political, personal, otherwise, and so all of these things are what allows us to have the internet, or what allows us to have the content. But interestingly, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act applies to copyright. And just to give just a super quick background on that, the takedown process, we don't need to know the rest of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It does everything from the internet to protecting boat hulls. So we can probably shortcut the process. But let's talk about the takedown process. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act provided for a takedown process that said, as long as you had someone who would receive a notice, if you received this specific copyright takedown notice, you identified someone to receive it, and when someone received it, you would take down content identified as infringing someone else's copyright, you would not be liable for any copyright infringement.
Yeah.
There's a whole process. Again, we don't need to go into the whole process, but that's the way that I can allow you to put a video, a photo, a recording on my website and not have to worry that it's copyrighted, not have to worry about it, it's infringing someone else's copyright. Because if it is, they have to let me know. And once they let me know, all I have to do is take it down, and then I'm fine. I am 100% protected. That only applies to copyright. And Section 230 says that, right, I am not the speaker or the publisher of any content that you post on my site. That's great. Except that expressly doesn't apply to intellectual property. Section 230, let me find my citation. Section 230E2 specifically says that this does not change, enlarge, or limit any intellectual property laws. So the idea that Section 230 says you're not a publisher is true for everything except intellectual property. In that instance, it sort of dovetails into the DMCA. That's why I was saying they kind of work together, in that those two things together give me the full protection. Or do they? Because there's nothing in there about trademark. There's nothing in there about trade secrets. There's nothing in there about patents. There's nothing in there about any of the other things that might be infringed. So what people have done is as internet providers taken the approach of, I'm going to treat a trademark claim the same as I would treat a copyright claim. And if I do that, we all agree that I've done my part, right? I've done my position on taking moderation over that, taking control over that, taking it down as demanded, and therefore I'm free of any vicarious infringement. There's no law that actually says that. There's nothing in there except the contract, but contract law is pretty powerful, and so we are able to make use of that as service providers and give people a platform for content and still generally protect. So the Section 230 gives a lot of protections, but not necessarily about intellectual property. And the Digital Millennium Copyright Act gives some protections, but not necessarily about trademark. And more importantly, the DMCA only provides those protections if you have a plan in place to take stuff down if I complain about it. And so that's kind of the issue with the mod community, right? If I can either tell you to take it all down to begin with, or I can ping each of you, every time I get something that says you are hosting content that violates my copyright, you have to take it down. So it's an interesting question of who's hosting what, but the position I think that we see Rockstar taking is not a unique position in terms of how a game company or any other internet company would protect their intellectual property, but it's also, again, the conservative and protective viewpoint. It's a little more restrictive than we would like to see. Well, we the modding community, not we the lawyers, want to see it be exactly that restrictive, because that way we can enforce the ones that we need to enforce.
But this all assumes, of course, that there has been a copyright claim. What if there has been no copyright claims, which is generally been the situation so far over the last 7-8 years of the FiveM community?
Right.
I'm not aware of many copyright claims being made against cars, car liveries, tracks, etc.
Well, and again, that kind of comes to the question of level, but also, that's right. The question of, is anyone complaining about this is critical. I think that we have a situation, and I'm not playing these mods, so I don't know what Rockstar is actively doing now that they've taken it over. But one of the things that I would expect is that you're going to get a big push of, hey, now that you're under the Rockstar umbrella, we've bought CFX, you're part of us now. You can't do this anymore. As long as no one's complaining, I'm not looking. I've told you can't do it. I've told you need to stop. You either comply or you don't. I'm not going to police that. If someone sends me a letter,
they have been policing.
Okay, so that's that's the more conservative approach. That's what I didn't know but that's just the more conservative approach. That's I don't want to get the nasty letters. You haven't gotten one because up till now we're dealing with small potatoes.
We're back to the torrent side thing again.
Yeah,
our old meat and potatoes from the last 20 years has been the torrent sites, the small sites, getting the small takedowns and stuff, and but you say nobody running their own CFX, their own FiveM server. You say FiveM CFX's only involvement is they release the FiveM server software. You download that, you run that on your own server, completely independent of Rockstar and CFX.
Right.
So You just have it in your own server. There's no thing except for the central lobby to connect in. That's it.
Well, and I think a big part of this too is future push. It is my understanding anyway that GTA 6 is likely to involve some modding and some and some availability of this type of role play experience itself. So how that actually comes in and whether that's incorporated in some way that's actually enjoyable to the community are two very different questions. But if that's the direction they're looking to go, then again, all the more reason why they might try to be a little more restrictive and a little more protective of the brand before they launch something like that.
Yeah. Come back to the one claim that I've had a very different view of all of this. That it's been, because it's on the server owners themselves, that there's no copyright claim being sent to them, that Rockstar themselves can't enforce any kind of copyright claim that has not been made.
Except to their stuff. But that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's their stuff that I was about to say, because one of the other things a lot of people have done is they've taken the GTA 4, the Liberty City map, and they've imported that into 5.
Right.
That they do have an enforceable claim, to my understanding, about. But everything
and
else,
enforcing, to my understanding.
yeah, and everything else. So, to my understanding, because I am not a lawyer, you are, and you are not anybody else's lawyer here, of course. None of this involves legal advice.
None of this is legal advice. But
yeah, we should probably put that as a disclaimer. Let's go back, and if you watch this, he'll have said this at the start, but
at the start I told you all of this is not legal. Yeah, no. The question, I guess, again, right, in terms of, do I have any standing to tell you can't use someone else's copyright or trademark, is different than, do I have any standing to enforce that? Then this is where the contract question comes in. So in a big picture, can I go say, you've put a Dodge Charger in my game and I'm going to sue you for putting a Dodge Charger in my game? I cannot, because I don't own a Dodge Charger. But what I can do is I can say, I have a contract with you that says you won't put someone else's intellectual property in this game. And I know that's a Dodge Charger. And because I know that's a Dodge Charger, that's an infringement of someone else's intellectual property. You are violating my contract. You are violating my terms of service. And therefore, I can enforce that against you. So that's why these exist. That's why these are done to be restrictive, so that I can enforce that when the problem arises.
Okay, so it's more of a very convoluted contract law sort of.
Correct. Because I don't own the trademark. I can't enforce the trademark, but I also want to show that I recognize that trademark, and I don't want to be part of the infringement. I don't want to be sued anyway. So I don't want to be sued as taking part in the infringement. I'm going to use my agreement with you to push that out of the server. So
overall, I guess basically what we've come kind of narrowed things down to is that there's no actual real copyright claim or interest in it. It's more that they want to avoid litigation on themselves, and they want to, let's say, we're recording this just after they've just announced that GTA 6 is going to be coming out soon, right?
Right.
They announced that 2-3 days ago, but that 6 may have role-playing things, and that they may indeed start selling role-play packs for 5 itself is another distinct possibility. They may start selling add-on packs, and they want to open up the market that way. So it seems like it's more a commercial side of things rather than a, we're just trying to protect you from copyright claim sort of stuff.
Some of it's protective, some of it's commercial, and welcome to capitalism. But that's right. I think both of those are a big part of why you're seeing action being taken. But again, in terms of, is there anything surprising or anything uncommon about this type of language and this type of agreement? Is not in the slightest uncommon. The question is, how enforced is it, and how much action does someone take? That's where the commonalities may end.
Okay. It's a big contentious issue, and it's really upset a lot of people, because a lot of time, a lot of effort into making all these car mods and packs and stuff, all will be thrown out.
Well,
So
you know, and that is one of the hardships.
the risks you take.
It's the risk
Yeah.
the risk you take when you're generating something like that with real world branding. But yeah, unfortunately, the other thing that we always harp on in law school for copyright is that there is no protection for the sweat of the brow. The fact that you did a ton of work for it doesn't mean that it's protectable, and it doesn't mean that it's yours. That's back to the cookbook and the phone book, and no matter how hard it is to list all those names, it's still not protectable. When you use somebody else's brand, your work could be created. You know, you could have created a very protectable derivative work. All of these mods would be, unless they left them for somebody else. But if you've created this mod, you've created your own work. It's protectable. It's just that you can't do anything with it because it includes somebody else's brand too.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that about covers it for everyone then. So you're saying that the best thing probably people can do is to take it down because Rockstar can and will enforce and have the legal right to enforce, right? Basically,
Correct.
It's in contract.
Correct. It's that if it's in the contract, you can abide by the contract, or you can not play the game.
Oh boy. All right. Well, TJ, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. I missed having our long chats and our long talks and our long discussions. It's been too long since we've done a nice panel together.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
All right. You take care, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Well, that was an interesting debate and discussion. Didn't quite go the ways I was expecting. I'm kind of surprised by what was discussed. I mean, for those of you who think I pre-plan everything and pre-discuss the topics beforehand, clearly not the case. Those of you watching, I want to thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, then please, hit like, subscribe. Really helps me out and helps me grow the channel and get the word out to others. If you've enjoyed TJ, of course, come see us at DragonCon in future or look at our past talks on this channel. But for now, until next time, take care, stay safe, and don't get carjacked. Bye for now.